Coming up on Ignition GT, it may have taken 50 years, but Ford's Mustang is finally available in South Africa, and we're among the first to drive it. They have done a great job in turning this into a driver's car. It's a massive improvement from previous generations. Toyota's ever-popular RAV4 gets a midlife makeover.
I was quite impressed when it was on the sand. I mean, I think there it really came into its own.
And Gugu puts the Audi RS3 through its paces around Swartkops.
First turn, drifting out slightly. Hey!
Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of Ignition GT. Now, if you're among the many who started back at work this past week, seriously, I hope that the return to office life hasn't come as a complete shock to your system. But what we thought we would do is we thought we'd kick off the new year on a super high note. And what better car to do it with than the iconic Ford Mustang? For decades, the American car was defined by something like this, the Cadillac Fleetwood. It is enormous at nearly 6 meters long with an equally gigantic 7-liter V8 engine. With proportions like this, you can imagine, yes, it is very spacious, luxuriously appointed. But with its soft suspension, going around corners was something that you did really slowly, if in fact at all, which is probably why the Americans built such beautifully straight roads. But then in 1964, along came a car that would change the face of motoring in America forever.
The original Mustang became an overnight sensation. Its record as the world's fastest selling car is well documented, but the figures remain impressive. 1 million units were sold after just 18 months in production. Things started going pear-shaped very quickly though, and by the time the second generation came around, the car had become almost unrecognizable as a Mustang. To make matters worse, increasingly stringent emissions legislation had all but tamed the galloping horse.
In fact, at some point in its illustrious 50-year history, the Mustang came very close to being another American land yacht. Close, but not quite.
The sixth generation represents a return to form, literally. It possesses classic Mustang hallmarks, like the impassably long bonnet, while the slanted 3-strip tail lamps make it instantly recognizable, even at night. Would the Mustang deliver on the promise of more athletic on-road performance, hinted at by its exterior design? On the face of it, things did not bode well.
My name's Marius Roberts and I'm driving a 2.3-litre EcoBoost Ford Mustang. I know, it's a confession. I had to just get it out there right in the beginning. Please don't judge me. I actually chose this car on purpose. You know why? Everyone always thinks of Mustang and the heritage and they think big block V8s, and that's obviously what they're most famous for. But when the brand started back in '64, it was little 6-cylinder engines that they were running. Now the 2.3 EcoBoost, 4-cylinder, how can that be a pucker Mustang? But if I never told you that's what I was driving, you'd never have known. And that's where Ford have done a really fantastic job from a styling perspective, because whether you're in the big boy or you're in the junior, it still has the same amount of presence and macho status on the road. Great job. And think about it, all the manufacturers do that. Mercedes-Benz, you can't afford the AMG, but you want the AMG look, you buy the AMG line. This obviously comes kitted out like that at the fixed price. I want to talk about the drive though, because we know that Mustangs in the past have been notoriously bad at handling anything that's got a corner. The Americans, flat road specialists, the Germans have the corners. They've done a great job with this, and I think the main reason is because they've now got an active rear suspension. An independent one works really well, and it brings the car to life. This 2.3 EcoBoost actually has too much grip. We're running 255s at the back. There's no way this car is ever going to break out. It is not as precise as the Germans, I'll give it that. There's still a bit of unsettling and wallowing, but it is way more dynamic from a driving perspective, so I really enjoyed that. But I think for the average driver out there today who has always aspired to own a Mustang but probably hasn't spent enough time driving powerful rear-wheel drive cars, this is going to be the Mustang for most of the people out there, because you're going to look good, it goes really quickly. 233 kilowatts, 434 newton meters is plenty of shove. So you're not going to feel disappointed or shortchanged when it comes to the traffic light. The problem though is this: every traffic light I've pulled up to, everybody's like, rev it, we want to hear this thing. and there is no soundtrack, and that is disappointing because I've driven in little 2-liter turbos that have a great soundtrack. You can hear the induction of that turbo. This, for me, even though they're piping sounds through the speakers, unless you're driving it really, really hard, there's no sound, and that was the biggest disappointment. Another thing I didn't like is the interior. I just expected so much more when you're paying 700,000 Rand for this or 900,000 for the top spec. The Americans just don't have that attention to detail. It's irritating. It's hard Tupperware city, hard plastics everywhere, and even the little switches are, it's meant to look like chrome, but it's that cheap plastic chrome which put a ring on, it's going to scratch. I was really disappointed. Would have loved the Recaro seats in it as well. They're very comfortable, nice to cruise in, but when you are driving spiritedly, you just don't have that support that you'd like. A couple of irritating positions as well. We're in the 6-speed auto, but you can also get in a 6-speed manual. Good thing we didn't have the manual, because the cup holders sit in a position where the only thing you're going to do on a quick change is change bottles. You're not going to change any gears. They've got all the ambient lighting. You can make your dashboard red, green, purple, pink, you name it. But yet their switches are a different color, and I hate that. For me, all the colors in the car should be the same. Little finicky things, but when you're paying that amount of money, people are going to expect a little bit more. A bit more about the drive. So you've got a switch that can change driving modes. So you put it into your comfort normal mode. It's got Sport Plus, it's got track, and it's got a wet weather setting. You put it into track mode, and obviously it then limits the traction, which is really cool from a driving perspective. You can also change the weight of the steering. It's got a sporty feel, a normal feel. For me, a bit of a gimmick. The Mustang doesn't quite have the steering feel that I'd like, but then again, it turns, it holds its line, it's really responsive from a driving perspective, but when you are pushing on, it tends to want to go into understeer mode, which is great from a driver safety perspective at the end of the day. But this really, I would have loved to have taken on a track to really get to appreciate how much improvement they've done from a driving perspective. But we weren't allowed to take it onto a track. Now, I know it's the first car that's going out into the press fleet, maybe that's why, or maybe it's because the Mustang really is a boulevard cruiser, and that is what sets it apart. It's not as good as the Germans, but it is streets ahead of the Germans when it comes to street cred, hot looks, and turning heads. It's a cracker. If you're a fan of Blue Oval products, both new and old, then you have to make your way to the annual Passion for Speed Festival that happens at Swartkops from the 29th to the 31st of January. You're going to see classic Fords of all shapes and sizes in action. But the really good news is you stand a chance to win one of 3 sets of tickets for that weekend. And the first prize winner, how cool, gets a signed autograph from Supervan, Sarel van der Merwe, and his famous Red Galaxy. After break though, we're going to find out what our guests thought of the all-new Mustang.
Yeah, my money would be on the 2.3 EcoBoost. If I was taking one, I'd have that.
And Gugu gets behind the wheel of the sizzling Audi RS3.
Hold it together. I'm loving the sound in it.
You're watching Ignition GT. Hello and welcome back to this week's show. A number of aspects of the all-new Ford Mustang represents a really big departure from its predecessors. But does that mean the Americans are finally ready to tackle the Germans of the high-performance coupe battle? Here to give us their thoughts, welcome to our panel of guests. Nice to have you guys here. Nice to talk about an exciting car. So much hype, too much hype.
Nah.
Lorato? Chris, no?
Nah.
Yes, too much hype.
Justice, yes? Okay, this is going to be a good debate. Too much hype.
Oh, look, it's cool. I mean, we've been waiting for a right-hand Mustang, I think, for a couple of years now.
The world has.
Since they were launched. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The world
since
has.
64, yeah. Yeah. So now it's here, and yeah, I mean, I think at least there's something now for people who always wanted to own a Mustang. So yeah.
I think we're going to all agree, from a looks perspective, if you want to turn heads, there's nothing better than a Mustang at the moment. Just driving this car, Justice, I mean, everyone, whether it's a granny pushing a trolley, like, what's that? Incredible. They've done a fantastic job from a styling point of view.
Yeah, it's almost like people can't believe it's finally here. But for something that was so hyped,
Yeah.
I expected to be blown away, and that didn't quite happen.
Before we get to engines, so I know Chris, I know you love this car. I really like it too, but I think Justice hit on a really good point there. At 700,000 Rand, you have an expectation. 900 for obviously the V8. The bit that let me down the most was the interior. I don't know what your feeling was. It seems like they've made all these improvements from a drivability perspective, the greatest Mustang to drive, yet they just left the interior in the 80s.
I think the car doesn't pretend to be what it's not though, because people see that it's a Mustang and it's got so much like heritage behind it. I think a lot of people think that it's going to be on par with like the German cars or supercars, but it's not a supercar, it's a sports car. So as soon as you wrap your head around that it's a sports car, then I think the interior could be better, but I think it's adequate for what the car is.
I don't mind the layout. I've got no problem with that because you need to keep that. I love that American feel and the way it's laid out, but it's a use of materials, Lorotto.
Yeah.
I mean, those switches, if I want to switch driver modes, I mean, grab one out of a Mini for Pete's sake. It's a proper switch. It's a cheap plastic. The gear knobs, cheap plastic, hard plastic. The soft stuff is where you never touch. Top of the dash and on the side of the doors.
Yeah. Look, I mean, like I said, it was a little bit tacky in other areas. I mean, some of the materials, there's no sort of flow or congruency with the materials. I mean, some of it is good, but some of it has been lifted off wholesale from a Ford Focus, which for me, for a car starting at a price of $699, I was expecting a little bit more of detail, you know, good tactile quality.
Let's talk engines, because I know everyone's like, if I don't tell you that I'm driving that 2.3 EcoBoost, you'll never know. That's a good thing, because I mean, we actually said in the insert, people buy an entry-level Merc and put an AMG line on it because it's the same thing, but you don't have to go and do that. It looks fantastic. That 2.3 EcoBoost, you don't need more.
No, you don't. It's a brilliant motor. The way the power comes in, it revs nicely. It's really good. It's a well-balanced motor. Obviously, the die-hard Mustang purists will say you have to have a V8. But then the tuner side, the drifting guys, those kind of guys, those are the guys going to be buying the 4-cylinder and tuning those. Obviously, there's a lot more tuning options for the V8 because it has been around for 30-odd years. But yeah, my money would be on the 2.3 EcoBoost. If I was taking one, I'd have that.
Now, Lorotto, it's interesting. People forget that that's where Mustang actually started, with small 6 cylinders. Everyone thinks of the V8s, but we've got to consider a new market. It's now a world car, so new people are going to be buying into Mustangs. That's where they've done a great job with that, using that 2.3 EcoBoost, because it's efficient and it's fast enough.
It is. I mean, like you say, this is a global car. So, I mean, there's markets like China, where obviously the bigger the capacity, obviously taxes are high as well. So, look, like you say, it's a good car. It's a good engine, nice entry level. But I'm one of those guys who's going to sit on the other side of the fence. I want a V8. And I mean, driving this car at the launch, will come up to people at the traffic light and they're like, hey man, give it the beans, you know? They want to hear that V8 and you're like, well, actually...
I've got lentils, I don't have beef.
Yes, exactly. You know? I don't have the beef, you know? So I'd definitely go for the V8, but I just felt like it just could do it with a little bit more power. I don't know. It just felt like a nice sort of Vortex supercharger. They will definitely make this thing proper.
Because it's not a big difference actually between the 2.3 and the 5-litre V8. I mean, it's 303 versus 233. It's not a big jump in torque either. I think they could have done a better job on the sound, because we've driven a lot of, even the Focus ST sounds better than this. That was disappointing.
Yeah, I like the V8. That's the sound to beat. And as far as the 2.3 goes, okay, it doesn't have that brilliant sound, but I think people are getting used to smaller turbocharged engines, and I also think that people want that boost now. A normally aspirated engine just can't deliver that boost from 1,800 or 2,000 RPM. So I think it's going to win some fans, regardless of the sound. And the sound, I don't know, maybe that's not too hard to fix aftermarket.
And I've seen videos from overseas where guys have modified the cars already, and they're a lot stricter than we are in SA. Here we can have open pipes, nobody cares. I mean, they're meant to, but they don't. Overseas, you can only get catback exhaust, so all the cats are in place, everything's still fine, and those cars sound a hell of a lot better than the ones that we've got here, and it's basic. And if a tuning company can offer you that for a few $100s, it's why?
You're going to do it. Gearbox quickly. None of you drove manual. I mean, I'd love to have, because I thought that 6-speed auto is a little bit dated. It wasn't bad, smooth on the change, but it does get confused a little bit when it's pushed on. And placement of the cup holders.
I have to disagree. I thought that auto wasn't too smooth. I would have liked a smoother box. It felt a bit old-fashioned, but maybe that's part of retaining the heritage. I don't know.
We did have one problem. I mean, we weren't allowed to take this to track, which was a real pity, because I think then you can really appreciate putting in independent active rear suspension now has made a big difference to this car and the drivability, but couldn't go on a track. But I did go into a limp mode, no engine warnings, but had no boost, when we were driving it hard on public roads, very safely. And once it cooled down, it was working fine again, which was a bit surprising for me.
I think that's a special feature they do for you when they hand a car.
Yeah, they're putting that safety feature. This could be trouble. To wrap up, fantastic package. Price seems to be a concern when you start looking at what else you can buy, but do people who love Mustangs really care? Because one thing you have here, which you don't have with the 3 Series, is serious street cred from a look and styling perspective. So maybe it's not as good from a driving point of view.
Yeah, I mean, in the price bracket, if you're looking at like the German stuff, you're not going to get a top of the range German car for this price, but you'll get a nicely spec German car. But when I was 7 years old, I didn't have a nicely spec German car on my wall. I had a Mustang on my wall.
Exactly.
And now there's a chance to own one.
You've got a Mustang tattoo?
No, not yet.
Not yet. It might happen.
Easily.
Guys, thanks for your thoughts. Exciting car. Can't wait to see more of them on the road because they are real head turners. But they still work. Definitely. I think that's key for Ford. And we know that they're aggressively marketing their products at the moment. Well, whatever your thoughts on the Ford Mustang, it is sure to find many proud owners here in South Africa. Speaking of cars that sell well, after the break we take a look at the recently updated Toyota RAV4.
I have to say the new tweaks that they've done now with the little light changes and everything, it's a lot more sleek. It's an agile car. It's beautiful on the roads.
And the Audi RS3 flexes its muscles around Zwartkops.
And we're doing well over 160. Tap on the brakes. Turn in.
Hello and welcome back to Ignition GT. Now, during December 2015, listen to this, Toyota sold 507 RAV4s. To put that in perspective, that is nearly double the number of X-Trails sold by Nissan in the same period, or in fact Tiguan's shifted by VW. What of course is the secret to their enduring success with the RAV4? Well, we found out on a recent trip to Mozambique in their facelifted version.
When the first RAV4 came out, well, I don't want to call it shock, but it was a wake-up call for the rest of the motoring world because it just opened a whole new market.
People know the RAV. It's a brand that people know, people trust, much like the Toyota brand.
If you talk about an SUV in this type of class, compact SUV, then RAV4 is top of mind.
The biggest design changes I think are on the front, where you can see obviously a lot sleeker headlamps, and also the rear that carries through on the rear as well with the LED lamps on the rear of the vehicle. So quite a sleek look, but also bringing back a bit of the fun and maintaining the aggressive rugged design that we've seen with the 4th generation.
I have to say the new tweaks that they've done now with the little light changes and everything, it's a lot more sleek. It's an agile car. It's beautiful on the roads.
With the latest incarnation, I think they just made sure that the creases has been taken out, freshened up, and presented to the market again.
It is a facelifted vehicle, so it's not an all-new vehicle. Maybe it could have been a bit more extreme, but I like it anyway.
Things like trailer sway control has been added to go with the vehicle stability control, the hill start ascent, the downhill ascent control that you have in the vehicle. And also a lot of safety elements as well that have been brought in. So your auto door lock and your 3-point rear center seat belt. You've got alarm system now standard on the GX. So a lot of updates to the safety and security, and then also the capability of the vehicle.
It's definitely more quiet than it used to be. When you go over the undulations, there's nothing there, no bump stops that you can hear, or rattles or things like that. And I thought that was really good.
I think the drive is fantastic, I really do, because on the tar it's quiet, very, very quiet, noticeably quieter than the previous generation, I think. And then of course in the sand it was very, very impressive. We managed to get here without getting stuck once, and the sand was really thick. It was some challenging terrain.
I was quite impressed when it was on the sand. I mean, I think there it really came into its own. It's got amazing handling. I think, with a little bit of tweaks like taking out the air out of the tires, it was a really good car off-road.
So you start with the GX model, so that has the 2-litre petrol engine, manual and CVT, and the manual model comes in at 327,000 Rand. You have then a diesel GX model, which comes in just under 400,000, and then your top of the range VX models go up to roughly 480,000 Rand for your diesel all-wheel drive VX model. I think the vehicle has shown that it's extremely capable and obviously an extremely comfortable urban vehicle, but something that customers can take on the sand, on some dirt roads or wherever the adventure takes them.
Maybe it's not anything new, and people sometimes do want new, but I think people also want tried and tested, especially when you're spending 300, 400 grand on a car. You don't really want to take a chance, and on that basis, it's a very, very good prospect, I would think.
Right, time now for something completely different, and let me say considerably faster, from Audi.
You don't have to be an economist to understand the effect that the rapidly devaluing currency as well as heavy import duties have on our consumers. But allow me to explain. This here is a 5-door C-segment hatch and it costs 800,000 Rand. But then again, the Audi RS3 is not an ordinary hatch.
Actually, the RS3's standard list price is 710,000 Rand, but the test unit came with a host of optional aesthetic niceties, like the RS design and Audi exclusive black styling packages. What is standard is the stonking turbocharged 5-cylinder engine. It produces just 10 kilowatts less than the awe-inspiring Mercedes-AMG A45. And like that car, the RS3 is equipped with all-wheel drive. Still, no clue as to why the Audi costs 20,000 Rand more than its arch-rival though.
Turning in, first turn, drifting out slightly. Hey! Hold it together, I'm loving the sound in it. Oh, fabulous. Build up speed. Sweep. And we're doing well over 160. Tap on the brakes. Turn in. And punch it out. And four-wheel drive stuff. Well, as you know, with four-wheel drive, it does tend to be a little bit heavy and push the nose slightly, but we'll try and manage it accordingly. And turn in at the tabletop. And of course, the electronic side of things start kicking in. A little bit of delayed reaction with the acceleration, but hey. All the way down. Hard on the brakes. Turn in, wait for it, and open up. We accelerate all the way through. So to kick off the year, we drove the RS3 around here at Swartkorps. I must say I was expecting the car to be slightly quicker, but I guess the four-wheel drive system does kind of hinder it in terms of weight-wise. But other than that, an amazing experience. Thoroughly loved it. A little bit too costly, but yeah, it's an RS3.
So the big question, how did the RS3 fare against a stopwatch? I can't believe I'm saying this, but not particularly well. A lap time of 1 minute 17.4 seconds. Yes, it's quicker than smaller hot hatches like the Ford Fiesta ST, but you expect that. But it is considerably off the pace of more serious rivals. In fact, it proved to be 2 seconds slower than its S3 sibling, which goes to show possibly that maybe power doesn't always equate to more speed. Yes, Gugu, you and I need to chat, but next week we're putting you in something a little bit more sedate from Toyota.
It feels very slow, especially when you're starting from second gear, go to third gear, it's like, takes forever to get going.
And Lindsay gets behind the wheel of the eagerly awaited Mazda CX-3.
It's more than enough for pottering around town, very easy to drive, very comfortable and lovely road holding.
But until next time, please, keep left and pass right. It is so simple.